Hello, students. This is Mrs. T, and this is week 3 in our social problems class. And this is an introductory video about the next couple of curated videos that you're going to watch this week that goes along with chapter 2 in our textbook, which is about health and wellness. Mental health, physical health, both are covered here. Health and wellness issues. There is a reading assignment posted in the week 3 folder of our social problems class. And so those pages, we're not going to read the whole chapter, but we're going to read the pages that talk about, in general, human development issues, development around the world, how mental and physical health are measured, and these kinds of things. And so in this video, I'm going to give you a lot of pointers that, number one, you're going to need to take notes on, and you might have quiz questions, or you might need these pieces of information again for our first test that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. But also, I've left on the board behind me just wide open spaces, really, in conjunction with each of these bullet points, because it gives you an opportunity to do a little research online and include an outside source in a reaction paper for this particular week. So in sociology, we study issues related to health and wellness, physical health, mental health. However, sociology is a field that really doesn't apply to every single culture around the world. So we've already used or learned the fact that a social problem has a great deal to do with groups within the population, large categories of people within the population. What do they perceive is a problem, or what do they perceive is an issue? So one of the questions that we are going to address in this particular chapter is whether healthcare, disease cure systems, healthcare systems, mental wellness, medications or treatments, whether these things should be considered a human right. If you do some research online, you can look up the UN, United Nations, Declaration of Human Rights. There's lots of different graphics that you can look up too. You don't have to read like a long article or go to the United Nations website specifically, but you can do the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and you can look at the images that show up and look at all the little posters and graphics that have been made to show you what the United Nations agreed upon decades ago were some universal human rights that the dignity of humanity should expect worldwide, not just in our society in the United States, but any other society that you might go to in the world. You will notice that health and wellness is not, or health care in general, is not a human right. It's not one that is on the list that the United Nations proposes should be universally acceptable. So I want you to maybe, after you read these pages that are in the reading assignment and learn about the way we look at mental health, physical health, and wellness from a sociological point of view, do some research about human rights and whether there is a debate to accept healthcare or physical health and wellness, mental health and wellness as an assumed human right that should be protected internationally. So look at that list of human rights, and you might even want to compare it not only to the information in this chapter, but just look at that table of contents that I've referred you to in our textbook, and just look to see whether many or not very many correspond to that list of human rights that is proposed by the United Nations. So that's something that you can research. Another thing that is mentioned in your reading assignment is the Human Development Index. It's on the board behind me. And the Human Development Index is a measurement of how well a population is faring mentally, physically, through development, industry, economically, education-wise, compared to each other worldwide. So there are some Human Development Index issues like a lifespan or life expectancy, education level, and standard of living that are measured. Those are the three main categories that are measured in making a comparison of style of life from one place in the world to the next. One of the things you can look up in the Human Development Index, and maybe even relate it to your investigation of human rights, is, for instance, what nation on earth has the shortest life expectancy compared to what nation has the longest life expectancy. And you can look at some statistics that have to do with health and wellness initiatives in those nations. You could also look, for instance, at birth rate or live births, number of live births in the population from one country to the next, and learn about how society differs from place to place. Therefore, the norms and expectations for your life experiences within that country compared to another differs greatly, and therefore the subjectivity of whether someone identifies an issue as a social problem or not can be affected by just the fact that society and culture is different from one place to the next. So I have here, beside this word fatalism, it's a little bit small behind me on the board, but I put it here in conjunction with the Human Development Index because one of the measurements of life quality is a standard of living. And here in the United States, you and I enjoy a very high standard of living. Even if you are someone who lives in poverty in the United States, our standard of living is increased simply by the fact that we have social services and utilities that are public utilities that are available to us. There is an electrical grid, there is a wastewater management system, there is a municipal drinking water system. You can guarantee that when you turn on the faucet in your sink in the bathroom, the water is clean enough for you to brush your teeth with it without getting sick. And so some of these social services and these utilities that are in place that you'll measure around the world are going to affect whether we have high rates of illness in a country or not. So if you don't have a sanitation system that carries human waste or animal waste or any kind of waste that can transmit diseases, if you don't have a system that carries that away from where the people live, or it carries it too close to their drinking water supply and contaminates it, these kinds of things can greatly affect whether there is an outbreak of an otherwise controllable disease or something like that. And so please look up fatalism. It has to do with the standard of living that is so low that you yourself as an individual in that society, you don't have any feelings of hope that you can do something to make a change that would affect you and those around you. So fatalism, the word fatal of course means death. Fatalism is a way of thinking that has hopelessness at its core. If your society is so depressed as far as it does not have social services to help you with costs for just food and appropriate housing, or it doesn't have utilities that bring about proper sanitation or safe drinking water, safe water to use for cleaning clothes and other things in the household, then you might as an individual feel so hopeless and have fatalism as an attitude that the social system in general creates that mental condition for you, and there isn't a pill, there isn't therapy, there's not anything that can necessarily handle that for you in your lifetime. Instead, systemic social change or even a rebuild needs to occur in order for the rest of the members of the population and you to get over your fatalistic attitude. So fatalism is something that is a real issue, especially it's a debilitating mental issue that is especially caused by the social structure of places in the third world. Now I'm skipping over ethnocentrism for just a second. I'll come back to that. But I've got first world versus third world on the board here behind me. Perhaps I put it in the wrong order, but it's number 4 on the board here behind me. And that has everything to do, the concepts of the first world nations like the United States, like Canada, like France and Spain and England. These are first world nations, mainly because of the infrastructure that creates a lifestyle so that you and I can build our prosperity, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Pursuit of happiness is the concept I'm looking for here. We can build that because we've got enough infrastructure at place to start from there. We don't have to worry about whether our water source is contaminated with something that gives us diarrhea that's going to make us die. And diarrhea is the leading symptom of the top 10 killers in the world. If you look at the CDC that keeps, or the World Health Organization that keeps their finger on the pulse of what the major health issues are around the world that are deadly for populations. And you won't see the word diarrhea listed there, but the top 10 killers in the world have the major the first symptom is diarrhea, which will kill you very quickly if you don't have a clean water supply to rehydrate your body. So, for instance, right now in Malawi and Mozambique, they had a terrible, terrible cyclone. We call it a hurricane in our society, but they had a terrible cyclone in February and March of last year, Cyclone Freddy, and it completely decimated the little bit of water resources, the infrastructure that people had, the sanitation that people had, and so there is a cholera outbreak in those places in Africa and the Indian Ocean. And this cholera outbreak is something that a health organization can't control until the water supply itself is clean, because you're just going to get recontaminated. It's just this endless cycle, and situations like that can create fatalism among the members of the population. And when you feel demoralized and feel hopeless to make any kind of positive change within your lifetime, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of forward motion to do that kind of thing. So look up Cyclone Freddy, look up the situation in Malawi and Mozambique that was caused by this kind of thing. Look up examples of first world to third world problems. There's a lot of photo montages and even meme sets that show the difference between a first world problem and a third world problem. And this can give you maybe an idea or something that links back to that concept of human rights, and perhaps why healthcare currently is not on the list of what a basic human right should be worldwide. Perhaps when safe sanitation systems are not even in place worldwide, when levels of development are so vastly different from one place to the next, that really puts a halt on bringing those social services and utilities up to par in comparison with each other, between countries, among countries of the world, then, when can we talk about healthcare being a universal human right? So, but, this is not up to me to make that decision. This is up to all of us, and it's a subjective concept to talk about whether healthcare should be either a right within the United States where we're living or worldwide. And if you are in the camp that believes, like Bernie Sanders and some other politicians believe and work toward making healthcare a universal right for people who live in this country, that is a subjective opinion that perhaps is affected by the fact that we live in a first world nation. We don't need to focus time on rebuilding social infrastructure like highway systems or airports or the electrical grid or sanitation systems and sewers or septic systems or water treatment plants so that we can have clean, safe water. We don't have things like polio that are endemic or pandemic in our world anymore. Measles, mumps, and rubella. I'm trying to say all those words in one thing. Measles, mumps, and rubella, that MMR shot that you have to have in order to come to the college or even go to kindergarten. These kinds of regulations have been in place in the United States for so long that we really have just all but eliminated things like those diseases among our population. Smallpox is something that when I was growing up, they had just decided to stop requiring the smallpox vaccine, and so I didn't get one, but my elder siblings did. My husband has one because our nation required these things because of a focus on public health. Well, that's a first world benefit. That's one of the many benefits of living in a first world nation. And so, third world nations, that's a different story. So, it might benefit you, I think. And we'll do this again, not just in this mental health chapter, but we'll do this again and talk about first world versus third world nations. And the problems that we in the first world perceive as social issues that folks in the third world might never be able to get around to focusing on because, they have a couple of beans and maybe a plantain to eat in a week, let alone, throwing our fries away when we get too much in our value meal at McDonald's, tossing it out or giving it to the birds or, putting it in the trash because we left it in the car and forgot about it. So that's a first world nation problem, whereas in third world nations, food scarcity is an issue. Okay, so let's get back to this word ethnocentrism that maybe I should have put higher on the list or talked about at the end anyway, or listed it at the end anyway. Ethnocentrism is one of those throwback topics to when you were in your intro to sociology class. Ethno, this prefix refers to culture, and ethnicity is a cultural background. Ethnic is a cultural group. So ethno here refers to culture, and centrism refers to focusing on that thing, turning your focus inwardly toward that thing. And so if you're ethnocentric, which all of us are, ethnocentrism is a phenomenon we learn it somehow, everybody, not just USA people, but people from all around the world, we learn it somehow where we think that our way of life is, here's my air quotes, natural, or our pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting, those social facts we discussed last week, or our cultural ways our cultural ways are normal, here's some more air quotes, they are expected, here's more air quotes, and we apply those expectations, we apply those ideas that something is normal to other societies, and we impose our point of view on other societies. Now, imposing our point of view might simply mean that we make a personal judgment. But countries like ours, countries like Europe, countries with a lot of military power and economic backing over history have taken their ethnocentrism, some people say too far, and they've colonized other countries, they've eliminated the use of that native language, they have changed the lifestyle, the food habits, keep on going. They've changed these things into their image, and this is an action that ethnocentrism has created. So when we look at a social problem, again, turning the lens of ethnocentrism to health and wellness, mental health, physical health, and wellness, let's think about whether this topic in general, does this topic have a USA or a first world focus? Is the first world imposing their ideas of what should or shouldn't be a human right onto the third world, the second world, places that are less developed than we are? And so these are concepts that I'm not proposing that I have the answer. I don't propose that you will be able to decide on or develop a definitive answer on this. These are philosophical questions that are necessary to explore when we are taking more advanced classes like this one over and above an introductory level. So let's take these opportunities that we have in this class each week and look at some of these core concepts that perhaps we went over really, really quickly when you were in an intro to sociology class, but now we can apply them and really examine these topics that we transition from each week using those lenses that we learned about in our first section of sociology way back when. Okay, so I hope that you will enjoy the next couple of curated videos that I have selected for you in our weekly folder. You've got one on just the sociology of health and wellness, just for a little bit of a review from the Crash Course in Sociology YouTube channel, and then also a video from TED Talks, TEDx Talks. There's a video about from a physician from Africa who has a unique view, a unique point of view about these topics, and so I have included that as part of your required watching this week also. Okay, so I hope you enjoy expanding your thought process and having a little bit of academic freedom here where you can tell me your educated opinion about these things. Make sure you do the reading assignment, take notes on this and the other 2 lectures, and I look forward to your reaction papers. There's a quiz for you in this folder, and I will see you next week.